What? I can't hear you. You gotta yell louder. I don't know why you're here, but I'm here to go out of my fucking mind. What do y'all want to hear? We know a whole bunch of fucking songs. I like that. I saw a bunch of songs people requesting out there. What about we go back a little further? I always say we're gonna do an old one, but these are old fucking songs, motherfucker. And it's just a matter of how old. Dave, let's do Hybrid Moments.
Hello and welcome to Talking Bird presents Two Dudes Talk About. I'm your host, Robert Zachary, along with my illustrious co-host, Sean Judy.
Hello there.
Hello. It's been a while.
It has been.
Yeah, although we didn't really get, I didn't get any complaints to hosts at talkingbirdcast.com unless that doesn't work anymore. It hasn't been used in a while. Nobody's been
forgot the login.
Nobody's been. Well, that's not true. People have been missing us. They've just been saying it to our faces and saying like, "When are you guys doing another episode?"
That's true.
Life has been busy for everybody involved in this great production, but it's all been good things. So don't worry about it. But we are back. We went out and we did fun stuff this summer, and I think what you're getting here is because you might be, I don't know which one you're listening to, because I think you're going to get two mini-sodes today. I'm stealing a term from one of my favorite podcasts that not enough people know about, but probably more people know about it than this one. But the Pod Stallions, which is the guys that Brian and Jason, they do a great pop culture podcast you should always check out. But anyway, enough of that. They never promote me. So anyway, I think this first one we're going to do some recaps because, you know, what we kind of make our bones with on this show is the fact that we spend a lot of time talking about the Dark One himself, Glenn Danzig. We just talked about him in general, and I guess I should not assume you're all big fans of the show. I should say, what we do, we've had long conversations about topics, and Glenn Danzig comes up a lot.
We love Glenn.
We did one about a year, 2 years ago, where we just kind of talked about the man in general. Did a nice long conversation through the Misfits, through Sam Hain, through his solo work. You know, Sean is quite an aficionado. My knowledge pales in comparison to his on it. He actually went and saw the Michael Graves era. He knows these things. Anyway,
it's true.
But we also did one when we went and saw Glenn back a year ago. We saw him on his 30th anniversary of his solo band, and you can go back and it's on all your platforms. But today we got to see something that I really wasn't, when we recorded that first one, I really didn't think was going to transpire, which is we actually got to see the Misfits.
The original Misfits.
Well, contractually speaking, they are the original Misfits.
Right. When you're buying merchandise, it says the original Misfits. Yes.
Legally speaking, which
Glenn appreciates that.
Yes. Which, although it doesn't have, what's it, Franchi Coma
or Robo or Mr. Jim or any of the other
any
drummers.
Of those people or but as for all of the people that were there, Glenn, Jerry Only, and Doyle Wolfgang von Frankenstein. Is his real name Doyle?
I don't know if his real name is Doyle. He's one of the Siafra brothers.
Yeah,
he's one of
the Siafra brothers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was this thing they announced. It was kind of like this. It was a weird thing for me because I had just like went out and I'll talk about this at the tail end. As I had bought a pair of tickets to go see one of my favorite bands, Ghost, which I think I've talked about before, and they were going to do a thing here in town in Seattle, and I went because it's my 20th anniversary with my wife, and I thought,
Congratulations.
yes, thank you. And it was like, hey, that's our favorite band. I'm going to go VIP. I didn't go crazy VIP. I didn't go like meet the band, but it's like I paid a little extra. You get better seats. You get a little bag and all this stuff. And so I was like,
oh, goodie bag.
Yeah. So I was like,
hand lotion.
I was like, I can, yeah, it's like, okay, trust me. We are going to talk about that show because that's not too far off with some of these people of that show. But anyway, so I was like thinking like I can spend a little extra. Then like literally I think the next day they announced that they were coming to the White River Amphitheater, which for people that aren't Pacific Northwest, that is kind of it's not the, what would you call it? It's not, is it a Coliseum type, or it's not a theater. It's bigger than a theater, but it's not like a Tacoma Dome, which is not a huge football stadium, but it's, what would you say the capacity of that is?
Oh, I don't know.
I guess it doesn't really matter. Anyway, it's a big
venue. I mean, for an outdoor venue, it's
yeah,
rather large.
It's a big venue on the Muckleshoot Reservation, connected to their casino or whatever. But it was kind of like, oh, well, I guess I'm doing that, because it's kind of like that thing. You do not sleep on these things, because it's like, that's why there's too many times that I've slept on things. Like, I kind of slept on seeing Slayer, and I never got to see him.
Right.
And, I slept on going to see Rush, and I did get to see them once, but still, it made me feel like, why did I not go in the 90s? Why did I not go in the 2000s? So I was like, not going to miss this. So we procured our tickets and waited all summer to, I think that was, what was that? How many months ahead of time?
Oh, probably 4 or 5 months at least. Yeah. As soon as I saw that, I hopped on it too. And luckily we practically sat next to each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, as soon as that came out, it was one of those things. When the band announced that they were getting the remaining original members back together for this tour, I want to say it was 2017. Or was it 2018?
Okay, so they had started saying, because I thought those were just kind of one-offs and that they were never going to do a tour.
Well, I don't know. See, there's a lot of conflicting information on that, because
I've heard
Glenn didn't want to call it a tour, and they didn't really want to have a set schedule per se. But I know that they had agreed to play a certain number of shows as a minimum.
Okay.
To make this thing happen, and so it also kind of was scheduled around his 30th anniversary tour.
Right.
But the first show they got back together was at Riot Fest in Chicago. And I want to say 17, but it might have been 18. But anyways, in September of whatever year. And when they announced that, I was like, oh my God, if they ever get anywhere near, Seattle or even upper left US, I was going to do it, and it's funny because there's several of my friends who are also enthusiasts of the band. When they came to Vegas, or when they announced the Vegas show, we all kind of sat around and looked at each other and counted our money, and we're like, yeah, we should probably do this. We never thought that it was going to get up here.
Okay,
it was LA, it was Las Vegas, and we're like, okay, because Glenn, he doesn't always come to the Pacific Northwest, even on his regular tours. Like, there's been a few tours that have, blown by here. He's been in Portland, or he's been in, Vancouver, Canada, but he'll skip Seattle, and I blame the WTO riots for that. But
hey guys, stop breaking stuff.
Well, he canceled a show at the Moore Theater because of the WTO riot. I had tickets to that.
Oh,
yeah, it pissed me off. Anyway, stupid protesters. Anyway, so. Ruining my shows.
Exactly.
But I was so stoked, and when I saw that, and like you said, it was as soon as it came out, I was like, I didn't care, like, car payment, whatever, fuck that, I'm buying tickets. So
yeah, and I was kind of like, and luckily, again, I married 20 years, I'm a lucky guy, because I was like, hun, Misfits, she's like, just buy it. You pick the seats, pick the good seats. I'm like, okay. I was like, we don't even have to have a discussion about that, because that's like, there's a few bands that we can agree on, and that's one of them. She's always down for some Misfits. So it was kind of like being able to, see them and like, again, it's kind of, maybe I should be honest and be like, okay, the fact that Jerry is there is a big deal. Wolfgang, maybe not so much. Doyle or whatever. But it's kind of like it was a different. It was, again, they've had many different members, and if you read the mythology of it, I mean, again, I remember reading Glenn claiming that he played guitar on all the records, and nobody ever played. It's like, if you hear guitar on a Misfits record, it's me. It's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy all of that. I know that he likes to retcon a lot.
Yeah, he's no Todd Rundgren. He doesn't do it all.
No,
he doesn't do the drums I do the drums and I do the bell. I do the wolf sound, and then I do the catering. But no, but it's like, so basically the band was it was obviously Glenn and Doyle and Jerry, and then Dave Lombardo from Slayer and Dead Cross, and I guess he played with Suicidal Tendencies for a while too. But he was the original drummer of Slayer. Unfortunately, much like rock and roll drama that has gone through the Misfits, through Danzig, has gone to Black Sabbath and all this stuff. It's like they do their final tours and the original drummers are not there. It's like, so Slayer, they did their final tour with Paul Bostaff for Forbidden Evil or whatever instead of Dave Lombardo, which is kind of part of the reason I didn't go. I was like, well, Jeff Hanneman's dead.
Right.
It's like, I don't have anything against Gary Holt or whatever, but he's like not. Well, actually, I'm sorry to go off topic so quickly, but Gary Holt was like admitted that they're like, well, how do you play, remember the solos every night of those songs? He goes, oh, I don't. I just make them up on the spot. Nice. And I'm like, oh, you're not even trying. Forget it. Although, like I said, it's like I have seen some live Slayer DVDs. I don't know if I missed that much. It's kind of hard to pull that off live.
There are some bands, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. I saw Iron Maiden again several days before we saw the Misfits in Tacoma at the Dome, and it's the third time I've seen them live. And some bands are meant and made for live performances, and some are not.
Yeah. And it's kind of like that. But yeah, it was and then there was who's the guy that plays rhythm for the Misfits? It's like AC something. There was a kid back in the
that you mean Doyle's body double?
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy who was
kind of they didn't put a light on him.
No, because they wanted you to think Doyle was playing guitar.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we can jump into that now if you'd like.
I don't know.
We can talk about it in a minute.
Well, yeah, it's like, so anyway, so that it was kind of a put together band, and then it's, gosh, what a lineup. It was, the opening band was the Cro-Mags, which is something that I had not, hadn't even thought about since I was like 16. I was very much into I think Age of Quarrel was my record or whatever, which is Harley Flanagan. And that's one of those bands, again, like most of these punk rock bands that have had major lineup changes through the years. Because I guess the version of the Cro-Mags that I liked wasn't even like the classic era. They had this guy, John Josephs, that was a singer, and then he quit the band, and then Harley, the bass player, did one album as the vocalist, and then I kind of moved on, and then John Joseph came back, and then Harley and him got in a fight, and Harley Flanagan bit his finger off almost.
Behind the music.
Yeah, and then it was like, I'm out, and now Harley Flanagan is back running the thing, so it was kind of like, it's like that. It's that New York hardcore stuff.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like Black Flag and stuff like that. Like, there's so many versions of it, and you just really don't know. Yeah. But
it was just nice to see something that was it's kind of like the history of it. These, again, it wasn't the classic lineup, because I remember it was like, where's Peter Mitchell Mayhew or whatever? It's like, nobody, I'm probably the only person that was like, where's Peter Mitchell Mayhew? It's like, you can't see him from that, so what's it matter? I was actually, Rocky George was playing guitar with them, and Rocky George is, I'm doing my Matt Pinfield. Remember Matt Pinfield? The bald guy from MTV.
Right, yeah. Oh God.
You might know Rocky George because he played with Suicidal back in the day, and he played. So Suicide, but that was kind of like, for me, it was great because it was like Dave's Lombardo's playing with the Misfits. I mean, that's like my whole high school thing there, what I was into. And then Rocky George, because I was a huge, like, that era, like Trip to the Brain, and how can I laugh today when I can't even smile tomorrow. Would you ever get into like mid-period metal crossover Suicidal?
Yeah, I mean the Suicidal Rock and all that. Join the Army. What was?
Yeah, there was.
that?
Well,
I forget what was that.
Well, there was that early.
What was that album?
You know, the early punk is like I killed your mommy's dead, or I just want institutionalized. Like that stuff was fun.
Yeah.
But then they kind of like when it was the Headbangers Ball era, the thrash era, and then Robert Trujillo, who's in Metallica,
of course,
was playing bass for them, and that was that was my sweet spot because it was just weird enough. It was kind of something different because it's got that. Well, I don't know what it's like. Kind of like Mike Muir's whole like I don't even know what his whole thing is like. Lightly gang affiliated. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's that whole the LA hardcore scene. Right?
Yeah,
like,
it's kind of like that thing where you're like, well, he's wearing that headband that kind of like when you're 15, you're like that kind of looks cool, but then you're like later on, you're like, wait, is that like Colors? Is he like
pretty much?
Is he driving past somebody's house after the show and shooting the place up? I don't know, but yeah. So that anyway, Mike Muir wasn't there, but. So we saw Cro-Mags. They did a very truncated set, not because of anything other than that
just
was
timing,
the timing. It's 20 minutes.
It was too bad because they were good. I mean,
yeah, super enthusiastic. You know, just really highly energetic. And then we got to see The Damned, which is that was like a thing where I'm not going to pretend that I'm like a Damned expert, but I've always enjoyed The Damned, but. Maybe I didn't know enough about them. It's like the thing where you kind of go, yeah, it's that one album cover where they got like cake or whipped cream all over each other's faces and it's like neat, new rose and those kind of tracks. Right. Like that's what I always think of because I always sometimes I harbor this bad theory that like bands like, oh, it's like their first 2 records are really all you ever really need on any band. And don't even bother with anything, which is you miss a lot of good stuff.
That is also true. Yeah.
So The Damned, it was like that thing where you gotta, if you don't know The Damned, I mean, they predate the Sex Pistols for Christ's sakes. Right. It's like they were the first British punks on record, and to see that, it's like you're getting a taste of history, and it's most of the it's at least 2 of the original members. Again, it's Dave Vanian and Captain Sensible. I would actually, if people have any interest if you have Amazon Prime, shout out to Amazon.
Send us money, Jeff.
Yeah, send us. Actually, you could use our link.
Oh, we still have that, don't we?
It still works. The talkingbirdcast.com/Amazon. It's like one of those buy through things. It doesn't cost you any extra money, but then they kick us some money. I keep thought that expired, and then they sent me a note saying you haven't used it. So I could use your 30 cents. But anyway, it goes
a long way.
If you have Amazon Prime, there's a great documentary about The Damned. And I actually came home that night and watched it again because I realized it was like that thing I watched it and then completely forgot everything out.
Right.
It's like, wait, why is Rat Scabies not with the band? It's like, trust me, you know why Rat Scabies is not in the band. And it's kind of, Paul Gray, I guess, was playing bass with them, which I guess I thought he had been like with them for a long time, but apparently he actually had only played with them for a very small window in the 80s and then left for 30 years and then came back. So it was kind of like, but so you were getting, and the keyboard player has been with them since like 89. So you're not getting the 1976 lineup necessarily, but you are getting the long, thing. And it was a great set. They were energetic. Yes. I mean, they play a lot of gigs even still to this day. I mean, most of those, like Dave Vanian, I went and actually looked this up. He's actually younger than Glenn because we talked about this at the show or afterwards. Dave Vanian, well, unless he's lying, like a lot of these guys might lie about their age.
It's a possibility.
He's like 62, but I mean, it's like, again, it's like you wouldn't have known it unless you were probably standing in the front row or something.
Right. From our seats, he looked like maybe 32.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a great show, and it's like they just kind of like boom knocked it out of the park, and it was like which watching that documentary, which I don't think you've seen,
no, I have not.
It's kind of like there's a lot of like backbiting and this kind of thing and that kind of thing, and everybody hated that Captain Sensible did like a Calypso record in the 80s or
hey man,
but then,
everybody has a side project,
and then like the drummer's not there because technically, and it's always like it's always this thing where it's like, in a moment of weakness, I signed off all my rights to the band.
In a moment of weakness.
Well, it's just kind of like, I've heard that. So
Half pound of Coke.
That's the same thing that the guys from Venom Inc. say about the guy about Kronos from Venom, is that I was in a bad way and I signed away my rights to Conrad. And it's like, okay, whatever. I mean, I understand that these creative endeavors, and it's like, whatever. It's a fascinating documentary about like what being in a band I think is really like, especially when it's a lifelong thing. But it was a great set. It didn't knowing it didn't detract from the thing. I mean, they played Neat New Rose and all that, but they also played some of the later stuff, which I wasn't as familiar with. And I kind of went back and dipped into some stuff recently, like on Apple Music or whatever, like the Black album. They had one called, they kind of went almost a little new wavy, or even just kind of, their own thing. It's
right.
like, they're a very versatile band, and I kind of felt bad that I've slept on those. And so that was a good thing for me, at least, to go like, holy shit, it's not just this punk rock stuff. There's a lot there.
Well, it reminds me of the Anti-Nowhere League. They started out very, very rough punk, probably learning to play their instruments on the albums. And they went through a period there in the late 80s where they kind of drifted into sort of a British new wave kind of style, and they came back to the punk. But yeah, it's interesting to see, and like you say, I was never I never really listened to the Damned a lot. I knew of them, like the Cramps and other bands like that. They're all kind of adjacent to the Misfits when I was listening to them.
Yeah, it's that kind of fellow travelers or whatever.
Yeah, but seeing them live, I got an appreciation for their music, and so it's something that I'm kind of looking into now and trying to get caught up on, because I enjoyed their set. Same thing with the Cro-Mags. Like, I'd never listened to them before either, and so it's kind of fun. Like, you go to the Misfits and come away with 2 new bands. So
yeah, I will say I'm speaking for you, but I don't think I'm saying anything controversial. The next band before the Misfits, I don't think either one of us were converts of. I mean, they have their fan base or whatever, is the Distillers, which is Brody Dolly, which I don't think she was in another band before. I think this is kind of I was reading up on her. I was never really into I don't know what it is about that kind of like punk music. Like, I actually when I got home, I was like, well, I wasn't wowed there, but maybe it's sometimes you get a bad mix or whatever.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to give them a try. And I listened to 3 songs and I'm like, no, they all sound the damn same. There's nothing. It's like, I even watched a couple live tracks to do like a comparison contrast of the show we saw. It was like, they didn't engage with the audience really, except at the very end. They did a very obligatory, like, you guys ready for some hybrid moments? You guys ready for Mommy? Can we go out and kill tonight? It was like that thing where it's like, hey man, you guys like to drink some OJ and vodka? I bet you out there getting drunk tonight. You guys like some cold gin? Yeah, this one's called Cold Gin. That's her. It was that her banter was even the limited amount that there was.
Sounded like reading copy.
Yeah, it was like made Paul Stanley sound like, Marcus Aurelius or whatever. It was just kind of like
the Stoic.
There was that kind of thing where you're just like, okay. I mean, as time goes on, when I go out to a show, I realize I like a little bit of theatricality. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, maybe I was suspicious of theatricality. I was like, oh, well, that's Alice Cooper. And don't get me wrong, I love Alice Cooper now. But when I was 15 and Poison was his thing, which again, I love that song now, but at the time I was like, this is pretty lightweight. This is not even as heavy as the shit from anyway. My point is that I enjoy the theatricality of it a lot more. And so now when bands don't even seem to acknowledge that they were there, it was a bit like, So and again, it was short and sweet.
Yeah.
There were people maybe a couple rows in front of us that this was their Woodstock.
Right.
I mean, I'm glad that they had it, but oh my gosh, it's like it's that thing where you can look at one person's whatever meets another person's poison or whatever, because they were going ape shit over this band, and apparently they had kind of gone on hiatus for a few years. So that was I think this is their first time have been on tour in a long while. Okay. So
well, I'd never heard of them, first of all. Two, I was neither repulsed nor wowed by their performance. It fit in genre-wise, so it wasn't like some weird, festival where you're seeing No Doubt and House of Pain at the same, the same show. So I mean, it fit and it was fine. Like I said, I didn't run home and be like, oh my god, I've got to listen to their entire discography. So
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, we were marking time waiting for our fellows.
Yeah,
those dudes in front of us were like, they lost their shit.
Yeah, it's like I kind of wish I felt this way about them because I feel like I'm missing out. I mean, it was fun. It was a drizzly, kind of coldish day there. It was kind of like, luckily we were covered, so it's kind of like, am I gonna be cold? That's at the time of the night where you're like not really into the band. You're like, it's cold. Should I get a beer? Should I get a hot dog? I don't know.
Oh,
it's like
that's so punk rock.
I know, and I'm thinking like, oh,
do you have a vegan option?
You have the vegan. Do you have any? Is your field roast ethnically? Not ethnically. Woo!
Ooh, Freudian slips and ladders.
Ethically sourced and all this stuff. But anyway, it's like, the nice thing about these package deals is no matter what you think of the band, as long as if you got one turd in the punch bowl, it's like it's gonna siphon through pretty quick. So whatever. I mean, I shouldn't pick. It wasn't awful. It wasn't they were incompetent or anything. It was just like I just kind of said to my wife, I'm like, didn't that song just sound like the last song? Right. It's like, okay.
Well, one of the other things that we had talked about was if we had done the lineup for the show, we would have swapped. They would have played a lot earlier because we wanted more of the Damned and the Cro-Mags.
I would say that, and then the joke thing was, I don't think Glenn would want Dave Vanian performing so close to him vocally, because he'd be like, Dave Vanian still got a great voice, and you can see the thread through that maybe Glenn had
ripped him off a little bit. And I'm not saying that Glenn has ever stolen from anywhere. Michael Golden.
Yeah.
What?
But heavily influenced.
Heavily influenced.
But again, I will say in his defense, the Crimson Ghost, I mean, come on. When were you I've still never seen an episode of the Crimson Ghost. That stuff is probably way in public domain by now anyway.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But it was kind of, but that being said, there were a lot of people freaking out for the Distiller, so maybe that was the whole reason.
Kids these days.
So then finally the show kind of, I think it started on a pretty even clip. It was like, everything is much on time now. It's not like when I was in my 20s and you go to a show, and even if it was a big show, you're never quite sure when the goddamn band is going to coming out. That's true. It's like, oh God, am I going to be, because I was already kind of a little bit like, I've heard it takes 2 hours to get out of this White River Amphitheater thing, because what happens, the tribal police shut off all the residential streets, right, and they siphon you around the whole thing, and it took every minute of that 2 hours to get out of that parking lot. Anyway, what am I talking? Because the Misfits were getting on stage, and that's more important than parking. I mean, what was your, like, right out of the bat? What was your first impression when they hit the stage and they started playing?
Well, face melting.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, the thing was when they, and maybe this is, in retrospect, I'm sure we could probably nitpick, but in that moment, that hybrid moment, in that moment when they came out and started, it was just, it was very bucket listy for me, right? Obviously, we kind of talked about that before, about, one of the things I've always wanted to see is these guys perform together. And I had a lot of anxiety about it. I was very worried, having just seen Glenn, last fall,
and like loving it.
And but we saw Glenn, and we had commented on, his voice, and how as he's getting older, he's sounding a little more breathy and a little airy in his vocals, and he's not the evil Elvis anymore,
Right.
And we've gone, and we've talked about that, and check out our other podcast; it's great. But he came out in full throat, and the guys, and even though I know Doyle had a ghost guitarist playing for him, like they rocked, and I think. One of the things that I maybe mentioned to you either afterwards or whatever was like, that venue in that style of performance, almost stadium rock in a way with, a 35-foot tall stack of amps and all that shit. Like, that's the way the Misfits should be enjoyed, And they came out and they just kicked it and they ripped through the catalog and it was fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic. And of course they had the big light show and all that, which was great. And it was not necessary but totally awesome.
Yeah, I would say at the size of the venue, I would have loved one of these, what do they call them, like big screen things where they could put a camera on them.
Right.
But I understand. I bet she's probably worried about bootlegs slipping out of these shows because he's been very adamant about getting any kind of. You can find a song here and there on YouTube, but like full shows, they get zapped really quick.
Right.
I mean, my first impression, like the first song, I was a little bit like, I didn't hear, like his voice was like sounding pretty rough on the first one, but by that second or whatever, he snapped in. It was kind of, ironically for me, I think that's exactly what I maybe had felt about the solo show a year ago. Like the first song was a bit like, uh-oh, we're getting raspy, Glenn.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, no. This is it. He just needs to warm up.
Right. Yeah.
I can't imagine him going in the back going, oh, me, 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 me.
Glenn doesn't do that. No.
Maybe he has that French onion soup that apparently.
French onion soup.
Give me some of that French onion soup, asshole. But, I was, but again, it's any reservations I had. Yeah, it was kind of like, I would say that I warmed up to this stadium idea as the show kind of went on. Because initially, when I was a kid and I think about the Misfits, it would always be like, oh man, see him in some crappy club.
Yeah,
where it's like
the Armory or something.
Yeah, where somebody's like, people
yeah.
are slam dancing against each, all that kind of thing, which back when I actually liked to do that sort of thing, that would just be perfect. And it's like, they'd just be like, their guitars would be like falling apart because they're just like, but then you're right. It does kind of, there is something when it, what is it, writ large or whatever, it's kind of like,
yes,
it expands. And I think, a lot of that has to do, you have a classic drummer like a Dave Lombardo who's played those kind of size venues, with Slayers all over the world. So it's like,
well, and Danzig too. When you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Christ the Conqueror ever played Madison Square Garden, but
like the Jersey VFW hall.
Yeah. So between those two, it's kind of like they knew how to elevate it. And Glenn was great with the audience. I mean, he was kind of, I don't know how much. The nice thing about not having 50 shows on YouTube to compare it to, it's kind of a good thing because I've had that issue. And we did a Metallica, part 1 of our Metallica retrospective, which part 2 will be coming in the future.
Incoming.
But one of my big issues was that kind of, I just literally just got off the plot. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, comparing shows, that I kind of was bummed out that Metallica essentially did the same show 2 nights in a row. Again,
all right.
30 years ago, it was because I didn't realize at the time that they were editing it to make a concert DVD, which you can buy now. But I didn't realize that they did all that stuff so they could edit it more easily. So I don't have to I don't have to worry if does he do the exact same banter at every show? Or I don't know because none of those videos up there, and I can just be like, it was special. Because he was like...
Does it make you feel special?
Because it was Captain Sensible. It wasn't Glenn. Was it Glenn that was remarking like, where are we? I thought we were in Seattle.
Yeah, you're right.
It was like
somebody...
I was either Glenn or Captain Sensible had made some comment like, I thought we were in Seattle.
Well, wasn't it the Distillers that were like, "Thank you, Snohomish" or some crap like that? They
Snohomish.
And you're like, yeah,
bitch. You don't even know where you at, bitch. Are you for real? But yeah, it's
use your Google Maps, bitch.
Yeah, so it's kind of like at first I was like, oh, that's that long-standing thing. I think I told that story about when I was a kid and Billy Barty had performed. I went to a thing in my little hometown, and the famous actor Billy Barty, he's a little person. He was in Legend, or Dr. Shrinker. He came out and they did it was a one-night vaudeville, and he'd go, "It's great to be here in Longview, Kelso," and we're like, "It's Aberdeen, the Hookworm, you
Mother
jerk." It's like, wow, it's like,
and you're short too.
you're a little turd. But yeah, it was not like that. It was mostly they were kind of, I don't know if that's not the way on the East Coast or whatever, where they just kind of like go, oh, you're within 30 miles of Seattle, you're in Seattle.
Right.
And it's like not really like that. Not that I needed a geography lesson from the Misfits or anything like that.
True.
But
I still don't know where New Jersey is.
There was this yeah, exactly. There's this running joke. There was this running joke about like where are we? I don't even know what town we're in. And it's just kind of like, it might have been Glenn and Captain Sensible. They should have done a duet. No,
they could have done a stand-up act together.
But Glenn was kind of like, he was a bit cheeky that night. He was like,
he was feeling it.
He was like, he just stopped and start laughing at people. And I was like, oh wait, is this like laughing all the way to the bank or something?
Pretty much.
And it's like,
but still,
it's like. But then some of his banter was funny. Like, yeah, I guess we're about halfway through.
Right.
It's like, okay. Usually when I go see a show, like the band never ever mentions time until they're like maybe 2 songs away from the end, because then people start thinking about it. But he was kind of like, not that I felt he didn't want to be there, but I also thought he's probably like, I'm not an unlimited reservoir of dreams for you kids. Right. I'm not going to be here. I'm not the Bruce Springsteen of punk.
Right.
He's going
to play like a 4-day
I am
show.
from New Jersey, but I'm not going to be, out there having a sax solo with the big man or whatever. It's like, he was kind of like, yeah, we're going to do a few more songs. But then he would stop and go, oh wait, we forgot to do,
yeah. It's like, oh, what?
Mommy, dude, can I come out and kill tonight? It's like, oh, it's like, it was kind of like,
I forgot, it's our best song.
It's our best song. It was like, you guys having fun? You all, what was he? It was like, Temple saying, like, you all sweaty?
Oh, there was the sweat.
There was a whole thing about being sweaty, and I'm like thinking like,
no, I'm not really that sweaty, but that's okay.
Well, thank you for asking.
I'm actually wearing layers because it's raining.
Well, the one thing though that I thought was neat was when he was talking about how the history, right? Like getting to make history. He's like, yeah, no, we're history. Like also, I'm like, yeah, you're like 60, Glenn. It's cool.
Yeah. You're living history. You are the History Channel, which I'm sure is probably what he spends most of his time watching.
Food Network.
I like to watch the calzone recipes, and then I want to hear I want a documentary about Himmler.
That's what cable's for, man.
Exactly.
That's why I pay for the whole package.
I get the whole package out. Though I'm thinking of cutting the cord someday. Once I can get my sport, sport a la carte. I'm cutting the cord. Would be like Glenn.
I could totally see him doing that.
Glenn
too.
Danzig calling up Xfinity, trying to get his bill down. Yeah, is that with the senior discount? Can I get Shudder? Can you add Shudder to my Because that's like the horror channel, right? You putting you guys gonna have that erotic movie? I hear that's really good. I hear there's some really large-breasted women in it, like cantaloupe-sized breasts. So anyway, do I get a senior discount with this package? Yeah, send the bill to Jerry only. He's paying my
in Lodi.
He's paying my cable bill because I let him perform with me. There's a cartoonist named Brian Walsby. He's on Instagram and he's touring right now with the band Red Cross and the Melvins as their merch guy. And he has an Instagram and he does little day of show cartoons, and he keeps doing this theme of cyborgs. Okay. So it'd be like Cyborg Keith Morris from the Circle Jerks, and he also does this Cyborg Danzig, and it'd be the Danzig is standing next to Jerry Only, and it's thank you for allowing me to perform with you, Glenn. It's contractually obligated, whatever. It's kind of
that's awesome.
that's the thing. It's like I don't understand the full scope of the legal round. I mean, I've heard people make jokes that like, or actually just out and out say that part of this is that part of the settlement between them, the Misfits, at some point they had to do an X number of shows as the Misfits,
right? And that's what I understood.
To
or at least
settle
that's what I read,
settle this thing. So, in some ways, it's like yes, it is the contractually obligated tour, but it didn't feel like that.
No, I've been to shows like in a way that that Smashing Pumpkins show we went to felt very corporatized.
I hate saying that because I had a fun night. It was
a great time.
nice hanging out with everybody and going to the show, and the music was good. But at the same token, it's kind of like I think I just paid $80 to watch Billy Corgan masturbate.
Yeah, and I know part of that was that show was being simulcast like on Yahoo or something, and there was a lot of that going on. But being at that show, and again, like you say, the music was great and it was a fun time. But it was interesting because watching this show with the Misfits and watching Glenn and Jerry interact on stage and just watching them perform, it felt like they got it back. They got the I don't know, the flavor or the power, the whatever gets you going on the stage. They're kind of. It's almost like they were kind of looking around in the moment, going, "Yeah, this is why.
Yeah,
this is
why
we do."
When I was 19 and you were 15, this is what we would.
This is what we wanted.
This is what we would joke around about and huffing gear up the back of some stairs, probably to get in some hall.
Right.
I mean, there's. I mean, I know never say never because we live in this weird world where everything has been rebooted. And every reunion has ever been reunited. It feels like it's like so. There's really no chance of like them maybe doing one more record or something like that. I mean, that's the door's kind of closed on that, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. You see, this is the thing. Like to get to this point, it took decades, right? Because I mean, after the Misfits broke up in '86. Whatever it was, 84.
Yeah, 84 or something like that.
There was all the lawsuits that went on and on and on about whether or not those guys could continue to perform as the Misfits without Glenn. And then Glenn's like, fuck you guys. And then they had all this back and forth. And, there's these stories and there's a lot of, myths and legends and urban drama about, being at, like, for example, being at San Diego Comic-Con and Glenn's there with the Verada brand, and he's, pimping his comics, and Jerry rolls in, selling an action figure, and there's, almost a fight, and there's all this, fuck you, and all that Jersey stuff. It's like a bad episode of Jersey Shore or Long Island Medium or something. But, but we keep hearing all these, spirits coming forward.
All of a sudden, Glenn, and we just interrupt you. I am a spiritual medium. And I'm getting a very sense. There's it's a woman. I'm hearing an M. I'm an M. Do you know somebody with an M?
Mother.
No, it's not your mother. I'm looking. She's blonde. She's very beautiful, but very sad. She's on a bed. She's nude, and Bobby Kennedy's putting a heroin suppository in her with a gun to her head.
Jesus.
Sorry. What
dude,
he did?
You got some weird porno.
He dropped a fucking like conspiracy about who killed Marilyn like on stage. He was talking. He was talking.
Actually, yes.
So that's
he brought the Kennedys.
I know you guys.
Yep.
Your guy like, what's up with this weirdo in his podcast? That was completely a germane comment.
It was actually. He did because you are correct. Before they played "Who Killed Marilyn," he said "Who Killed Marilyn," so.
Which is like that kind of thing where it's like, in not to get into like real world drama and stuff like that, but this conspiracy theory stuff in rock and roll, it's like I always love it when a good rock conspiracy theory gets dropped on stage.
Right.
Like
True.
I remember seeing, I think it was a video of like the Monterey Pop Festival or something, and David Crosby got up in his like raccoon hat and his serape and his guitar, and he goes, "I just want to let you know that the President Kennedy was killed from 4 vantage points on the grassy knoll." And it's like, this is like 68, 67, 60, maybe it's the Summer of Love. Wow. And he's like That's
a little close to the event.
David Crosby's like openly talking about like JFK conspiracy theories, and I'm just like, there's something rock and roll about having a fucking weird conspiracy theory and then just going like, I'm on a stage, I'm just going to drop it. Not that Glenn like went in depth about Marilyn. Right. He kind of just said something like,
you made up the suppository part.
Yes, he didn't say anything about that. There was, but read the stuff about what happened. There was a suppository involved.
Oh my god!
It was like something to do with like her housekeeper gave it to her or something. I don't know. It's weird.
Don't share suppositories, kids.
Exactly.
The moral of the story.
You got to watch In Search Of. I think it's on the In Search Of episode about Marilyn Monroe.
Is it old?
The old Leonard Nimoy one.
Oh, not the new fake Leonard Nimoy one.
Oh, yeah.
Zach Quinto.
I will not. I will go. You see, we could do a whole thing about my love of In Search Of. It's probably like in my pantheon, my Mount Rushmore of things that influenced me. Is like we got George Lucas, you got Leonard Nimoy as Spock, and then we have Leonard Nimoy as Leonard Nimoy,
right?
Kind of thing. Now I have a little birdhouse in my soul or whatever for Mitch Pileggi.
Okay.
Even though it was a terrible reboot, I just love Mitch Pileggi just because of a story my brother told me one time of when he was in college and they went up to Vancouver. And my brother's, a young 19-year-old college student, so healthy Vancouver, went into a club where there were women dancing. It just so happened to be old Mitch was having his bachelor party and Duchovny was over there in the champagne room. And it's like, basically. It's
like Red Shoe Diaries all over again.
Yeah, and it was like basically some woman rubbing her boobs on Mitch Pileggi's head and he's just like, ah. And I just always think of like,
I want to believe
this idea of like, of Skinner from X-Files having boobs rubbed on his bald head.
Still waiting for that episode.
Exactly. Sorry, we have really
digress.
We have they really digress, but yeah, it's that there was a certain kind of just like it didn't feel like a scripted show. No. This Misfits show, guys. I'm not talking about In Search Of or whatever, but
or the strip club.
Yeah, or the strip club. But again, he got so excited he'd skip over things on the set list and have to go back and like they did do an encore per se, but they also didn't like drag it out.
Right.
It was just enough to hit some water and go, what song are we doing? And then ran it back out and did 3 or 4 more. And
well, that's the great thing about the Misfits. Pretty much every song is under 3 minutes long. So a long encore is not really that long, and you can still do like 5 songs and still get out in time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like what song did they not do that I wish they had, and it was probably maybe She. Did they do?
No, they did not.
They didn't do She, but I think they did Horror Hotel.
Yeah,
there was very little that they did. I think they did Devil's Whorehouse. Maybe they didn't do Devil's Whorehouse. That's one that they didn't do. They didn't. I kind of hate to say this. They don't think they did anything that was hard. They had like a real riff in it. It's like you kind of have.
Well, didn't they do?
They did London Dungeon,
right? But didn't they also do Green Hell or whatever?
Oh yeah, they did Last Caress and Green Hell.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, they did stuff from Earth AD, which technically, Walk Among Us is it's the White Album, it's the Blonde on Blonde, it's
right.
the thing of that for me. But then also Strong Affection for what am I talking about? I love them all.
Right.
I'm literally trying to come up with
one more from Legacy of Brutality.
I'm like, I can't lie to you guys, you listeners. I love Legacy of Brutality and I love Earth AD, and they're 3 different, really fucking different records that have a weird thread through. So it's like maybe they didn't do American Nightmare, but I don't think that.
Which I was really hoping for American Nightmare.
Yeah, I don't know how you would do that even.
Well, again, that song for all of you people who really love Elvis out there, American Nightmare is Glenn Danzig's best Elvis.
Yeah,
he has stuff on his solo records that kind of comes close, and he kind of like Sistinas or whatever. Yeah. But man, American Nightmare is hip shaking Elvis singing about chopping heads. It's fantastic.
So you actually know the lyrics, because when I was a kid, because I was a cassette kid, and they didn't spring for the lyrics on the cassette, we would never know what they were actually saying in that song. Because in American Nightmare, we always used to just go, American Nightmare, running scared.
It's like something about a hot Chevy on a Friday night.
She looked so good in red. And that's that, yeah.
Put an axe in my baby's head.
Okay.
Yep. She looks so good in red. American Nightmare, running scared. Yeah. Check it out, kids.
Yes.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
One of those, like, actually, we haven't had this. I don't think we've talked about this. And I'm pretty sure that this is not something that happened. But you've obviously, have we talked about the Universal Vault fire from 10 years ago that has just now been disclosed to people?
You had brought that up. I don't think we've talked about it on air.
Yeah, so let me give people the 20-second version. Basically, Universal is like they own all the record companies now that they've all collapsed, and Universal Music Group, which is connected to Universal Studios, they have been acquiring music catalogs for decades now because of all the failure of the traditional record. Well, they keep this master tapes, like the actual like multi-track individual instrument things, because now they do this thing when Rock Band was huge. They would do these. Yeah. You could make a video game out of it. So a lot of these artists were like, "You want to store our tapes? Sure, let's go ahead, and they'll be safe." I think I always assumed that they were storing these things like out in Utah in a salt mine or something like that. Where
missile silo.
Well, I mean you do use that kind of stuff for data storage and film storage and things like that. But apparently, what had happened is this. I don't know where this happened. But there was a fire, and it burned the master tapes. John Coltrane, Billie Holiday. I mean, everybody, not everybody, but a vast majority of the 20th century's recording artists, their master tapes were destroyed in a fire 10 years ago, and Universal Music Group has kept lid on it because it opens this legality about what constitute when, I'm sure a lot of people have heard when bands talk about their contracts, they talk about owning the masters. And,
Right.
It's like Metallica, they own their masters. They literally have the tapes that, Fleming Rasmussen put up through the tape machine when they were doing it, and Michael Barbiero did when they mastered and took all the bass out of And Justice for All. That was a big thing for them when they left Elektra, and they had all this money, and they bought their tapes, and now they control them. Hopefully they weren't storing. I don't think they were storing them because they've literally just been remastering those things. So I think they have them. But what had happened is many bands are finding out that they kind of gave up their stewardship of their tapes because they thought, well, this big corporation will be able to protect them, or technically they own them and I have to license them back to release. If I want, anyway, they're gone. And I'm not saying the Misfits are gone, but it's like that thing where you go, maybe it's a good thing that Glenn Danzig probably keeps his master tapes under his bed.
It's true. He does. And you remember when they came out, after the box set, a lot of that was stuff that he had stashed in the basement, because if you look at that, the box set isn't truly a re-release of all of the original records, right?
Right.
Because there's alternate takes, and then there's studio outtakes, and then he put together, I'm totally gonna lose it. The album that he threw in there, he put the Doorway song.
Oh yeah.
Which was part of the original recording sessions for. Oh my God, this is gonna kill me.
Was it Cough Cool or whatever? Or
well, no, it's not the Cough Cool single. It's one of their early albums, but he had all of the tracks for the song "The Doorway," and which is also a medium Elvis tune. But yeah, one of the things he did is when he put all that together and put it on that CD and put it in the box set, and that was the only way you could get that song up to that point. Because it had actually never even been assembled. Like he had the different tracks, so he had to mix it and put it all together. And so there was that, and then later on they came out with, was it 4 Hits from Hell? They had re-released that, and then it got pulled. Like it had come out, and that was like in the lawsuit era. But these things, like Glenn kept pulling out these tapes. You like that song? Well, I got 4 versions of it, and these are all recorded in these different sessions. And it's like it's fantastic.
Oh, but I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I wish he seems like the kind of guy that it's like, he's not, he doesn't want any guidance. He doesn't really want your opinion on anything. He does things when he wants. Mm-hmm. But it's like, so I don't think he's the kind of person that, I mean, he wants to give you a good show. That's
right.
You paid your money to go see him and you got a great show, but he doesn't want your opinion about like what I'm going to say is like, please, somebody, go and remaster those tapes, because that box set to me doesn't sound good. I mean, like, again, especially like Live Evil or Evil Live. I mean,
Evil Live is terrible.
There's like this weird drift of like, it almost sounds like it's mastered in 8-bit whatever.
Right.
And you're like, I was just checking our recording to make sure we're not doing this whole thing in 8-bit, because I was messing around with it. It'd be like, everything sounds like
16-bit.
Everything sounds like an old sampler. But yeah, it's the thing where it's, that's the whole thing about, everybody's into vinyl again, and that's, people are going back to their tapes, and that's why I kind of brought up the Fire thing, because without these master tapes, you're literally, it's like you're getting a copy of a copy of a copy, and
we know how that works.
The degradation is just, and again, you're already losing. Most of us are streaming. It's going to our phones, and then it's going from phone transmitting into Bluetooth into your ears, and it's like you're losing. And I've already, it's like at my age, I've noticed I've got some hearing loss, but even I can tell like a shitty mastering job. And it's like, nothing, getting back into vinyl a little bit and realizing that, you can fuck up a vinyl master just as much. Apparently, I didn't know this, but they've been reissuing a lot of these classic records and then saying like, it says like music on vinyl, and it's all supposed to be 180 gram vinyl, but then you find out later it's like, oh yeah, it's 180 gram vinyl that they mastered off a CD.
Right.
So you're literally like if you look at the EQ curve or the things, like CDs cut off at a certain level, and it's just like, and people always try to sell people on records because they go, actually the dynamic range is all the way. I'm sorry, I'm actually talking with my hands on a podcast. I went small and then I went big for you at home.
For those of you scoring at home and for those of you by yourselves. Yeah.
And it's like, we are going to lose this thing. And sorry, Neil Young, your Pono's not going to save us. It's like, I'm Glenn Danzig for Pono. Do you remember that? You ever seen the Pono? It was Neil Young had his own, he was a big investor in this pre-Tidal, which is I think that's the Dr. Dre owned high bit streaming service.
Oh, okay.
The Pono is a device that I think Trent Reznor referred to it as, maybe it wasn't Trent Reznor. Yeah, he said it looks like a Toblerone.
Nice. Okay.
And it's like this really obnoxious.
Bar, nice.
Yeah, it's this obnoxious like iPod type thing that you put high resolution things. But the problem is that like anything else, when you go to the Pono store, what do you get? It's boomer stuff. Boomer music.
Well, yeah.
Now, I love my boomer music, but not every person wants to listen to Steely Dan every day or Jackson Brown.
No.
Sometimes we want to get, Possess 7 Churches that I just picked up on vinyl. I'm pointing to Larry LaLa. I used to have that. I used to have that on cassette. It's like thing's been out of print for like years. But my point is, like, you get back to this record, and then you find out, they're skimping on the record. So I want Glenn to go back and have them remastered. I don't want him to just drop the CDs on vinyl, which I think technically, if you buy the Caroline versions that are reissued, like they have Misfits vinyl at Barnes and Noble and stuff like that. I don't think it's from the original tapes.
I don't know about the Caroline era was very interesting because that was the box set release, right? And then they also with 12 hits. First of all, for the record, it was Static Age that was remastered and re-released in the box set with The Doorway.
Oh, okay.
And it was 12 Hits from Hell, which was the one that Caroline put out after the fact that then got recalled, I think it was a legal issue. But he had also remastered all of that. But those came out through Caroline, so I don't know if those are, remastered or from original tape, new mixes, new mastering or whatever. But I remember around the time when the Misfits first well, right before they got back together in 95, 96, there was, you remember, was it CD Now? Remember that?
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
remember seeing.
Yeah, so I used to buy Misfits vinyl off of that, and I need to go back and actually look at my record collection because I don't recall exactly who was pressing those.
Yeah, I mean, see, that's the thing. 90s was a weird time for vinyl because it's like there was very little petroleum content in that vinyl. I don't know what they were doing with it. Maybe they were melting down old Kenny G CDs and trying to.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's that thing. Where, but it was very common to get because that's kind of when I jumped ship on vinyl because I would go out and they did a like Ryko disc. Remember Ryko disc?
Oh yeah, Ryko disc.
Well, they had for all through the 90s. They owned into the aughts. They owned the Frank Zappa catalog, and I'm a Zappa fan, and I was buying reissues of that, and I took them back to Tower Records, dating myself, because I would literally put them on the turntable, and they were so thin that you could put salsa in the goddamn label and dip your chip while you were having the needle jump from one groove to the next. I had to take, and I just said, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna go to CDs. They play the same every time. They don't wear out. I don't have to balance my stylus. I don't have to worry about needle wear." And it sounded good to me. It's still, honestly, if you're not, if it's a well-made CD, it still sounds pretty good. But I mean, I do like the fetishness of the vinyl and and having the big example, because I never had a lot of vinyl as a kid, so it's like kind of like having an opportunity to rebuy them, because if I could go back and have all those like thrash tapes that I had when I was 15 on vinyl. Ugh. Although I will say, I did sell my copy of The Eternal Nightmare by Violence and Forbidden Evil on cassette. I sold them for far more than I paid for them when I was a kid. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, I'll sell them to you, but I made sure they weren't broken. But I want to say to the guy, it's like, why are you buying this? This is not going to sound like what you think. It's not going to sound good. This is not the optimal way.
Well, it's funny. I early on, I went through a period with the Misfits where I was trying to become a completionist, and that ended very rapidly when you start finding out some of these early pressings of stuff that were sent out to Fiend Club members and whatnot in the early '80s. $300, $400, $500 for it.
Oh, I know.
For an EP, and you're like, oh, I just can't do that. But I would, I'm that guy. Like if I get passionate about something, I want every version. I want all of it. I want it on the shelf. Kind of a thing. And I could see doing that and never even pulling it out of the wrapper.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the one thing about collectors that you realize.
We're dumb.
It's like I'm probably a bad collector in the sense that it's actually only recently I haven't opened things. It used to be I just open things, never think about it, and it's like now I have to always resist that urge to like, let me buy another one and not open it. It's like, don't do that. Don't do that.
Like we say in the collectors group, we got to buy 3.
Yeah,
one to keep, one to open, and one to shove right up your ass.
Because that's it's the pit. It's the eternal pit that never ends.
Yep. It's so true.
But that's the thing. It's like, we could get it. I don't want to get too far off into the collecting realm about all the stuff that all the kids that listen to this eventually will buy from my estate sale when I'm dead.
Well, I think that's what they're all counting on. They just want us to die so they can pick through our action figure collections.
Let's hope that they actually like this sort of thing. I mean, there was kids at this Misfit show. It was a good wide smattering. It wasn't all just the Grey Panthers hanging.
Is that what we're called now? Oh, I like that. Grey Panthers Motorcycle Club. Right?
Exactly. It's just like I was kind of thinking as like I might be the youngest person here, which is kind of when I going into like speaking of other shows, in a couple weeks I'm going to go see one of my favorite bands. It's called from Canada. They're called Sloan. They're kind of a straightforward pop rock band, but every single member of the band is like over 50.
Okay.
And it's like you go to the shows, everyone in the audience is like pushing 50. It's kind of like there's a few bands that you kind of go to. It's I went and saw the Melvins and Red Cross, last month, I think. And it was kind of like generally there was a few young squirts there, but they were to see the Melvins.
Right.
It's like they weren't there to see the Red Cross, and because they didn't know who those guys were, which not a lot of people do. But it's kind of like that thing where you're like, I don't know, are they really gonna want this crap? It's like maybe we're like the last generation's gonna care about having. Oh, I got that on vinyl. I told you about that. I used to be this guy to come in the store I'd work at, and he'd always like to just tell people like, yeah, I got that on vinyl.
Yeah.
And I haven't worked at that store in a very, very long time, and
He's probably still there.
no, he doesn't. He never worked. He'd shop there, but the funny thing is that you and I, after we went up to that, looked at that Zion Gate, his stuff that day, we went to that other shop, and he was there, and no, maybe it was a different day. No, I was there on a different day. That's it. And I bumped into him. He didn't recognize me, and then he started going, "Yeah, I have that on vinyl." And it took everything in my soul not to just start laughing and go, "Doug, you haven't changed. I haven't seen you in 12 years, and you're the same fucking guy." The vinyl guy. Actually, and this will be germane to, this might actually identify him. So if this person ever gets back to it, no offense, but this is germane to the actual breadth of the things that we talk about on this show. So he used to tell me, because he was from the Bay Area, or he lived, his sister was a Foley walker. Do you know what a Foley walker is? It's the person that, steps over the leaves and puts the microphone when they do the Foley walking for the sound effects for a movie.
Oh, okay.
She was the Foley walker for episode 1.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so she used to make the sounds of Jar Jar Binks when he go crunching through the brisky morning munchings.
God. And there you have it, kids.
And there you have it.
That's fantastic.
Excuse me, we got most concerts to talk about.
Just the boss nass.
But yeah, so again, it was kind of magical. I mean, like I said, I kind of wish they had the thing so you could get a better view of them up close. But they also had these screens with graphics that were, themed to the songs that they would play, and like color coded, and what do they call it, decoupage imagery of stuff. And it was just kind of, and they had like these huge like 30 feet pump, or they were
the pumpkins from
the
Halloween.
And so
EP,
they spent a lot of time putting on, like you said, an arena show.
Right.
Like you didn't feel like you were like they were just going to phone it in. And that's the thing. I was a little worried that they were just kind of like, all right, we got to do this contractually. I want to put a roof on my house. Let's just throw up a silk screen, and we'll get the guy from Slayer out, and we'll do these stuff, and we'll bang it out. Boom. But no, it's like that thing where you got a full show, and even Doyle was he did some shtick. Maybe this is something he does live, where he like walks around in his Frankenstein boots and makes this boom, boom, boom. Did you catch any of that?
Yeah.
It was a little shticky, but
so Doyle. Let's talk about Doyle for a second. Because
Sam, doggy, you can get up on the couch.
It's okay. I'll move my phone. Get up here, Sam.
Just say okay.
Okay. It's okay, Sam.
All right.
Sam doesn't like Doyle either.
Yeah.
So Doyle. So the Misfits, like when they got back together, I saw them in 1996 at DV8 in Seattle. Anthrax opened for them. It was a fantastic show. They came back. That was Michael Graves, etc. They came back, and Jerry and Doyle had sort of their 90s updated version of the Misfits aesthetic, right? They were making their own guitars, and Doyle had kind of, he started to get the armbands and then, all that kind of stuff. But over time, and then over the breakup or the rearranging of the Misfits in the aughts, and when Doyle left and then became his Wolfgang von Frankenstein, and he started the band Gorgeous Frankenstein after his brief, foray into professional wrestling. He developed this Misfits-looking logo that's like this bad skull that kind of looks like it could be Frankenstein. He's really taken on this personality of the Frankenstein guy, and it's different than the Misfits or his stage presence in the Misfits. And I would think, or I would hope, I would have hoped that when we saw this show, it would have been the Misfits guys being the Misfits guys. And Glenn was all about it, and Jerry was all about it, but Doyle was still trying to be like, hey, I sell my own records. I got my own band. You should check it out. It's like, and he's also not, it's very funny because he left the current iteration of the Misfits complaining about how nobody wants to write new music and nobody, is committed to the craft of making music. And then he started this band, and it's garbage. It's absolute garbage. Just don't even buy a Gorgeous Frankenstein.
I haven't even bothered to listen to it because of what you'd said about it. So it's...
Well, and I'm the guy, and we talked about this in the other show, but I'm the guy. I've got all the Eerie Von's, records that he put out,
Yeah.
And I've got all the Doyle. I've got Chud and Michael Graves' stuff when they left the Misfits. I've got all theirs, But yeah, just save yourself some dollars and just skip the Gorgeous Frankenstein shit. But anyway, but my point is that he left the Misfits 2.0, bitching about no creativity and no music, no new music, and all this other stuff, and nobody being committed to the craft of making music, and nobody practices their instruments. Big fit, and he runs off. His band is garbage. He's the guy on stage at the Misfits reunion show that has his quote, and I'm using air quotes for those of you, but he's playing his guitar.
Yeah, he's not.
And the sound is off. It's not plugged into anything. And they got a dude, like we were talking about earlier, behind the stage or off to the side with no light on him, and he's wearing, black T-shirt and black jeans, so you can't really see him. And he's the one over there actually playing the guitar. But because we've billed this as the original Misfits, we got to have Doyle running around looking like he's playing the guitar, so we get the aesthetic of, it's the original band. And that was very telling, and it makes me come back to the history of the Misfits and all the problems and all the things that have gone on over the last 20 years, and it brings a new perspective to the shit that he was running around saying about the band and what was going on in the band. And not that anyone in the band is particularly innocent of having ego problems, but it really kind of shines a light on him and his lack of performance.
Well, he kind of got some shit, rightly so. If the dog is okay, he got some shit recently in some interview. He basically, because the economics of being in a band is very different now. It's a lot. Any band of any size, like let's take like Mastodon. Like I love Mastodon, but like, they don't make as much money as we all think they do. I mean, I'm sure they make a good living,
right?
But it's like anything else. It ebbs and it flows. And, or even Metallica, they make a ton of money, but they had to just cancel an Australian tour because James is in rehab again.
Is he?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know. I thought you knew that. Oh, yeah. That's a whole nother thing. But
I can't wait to record part 2 of the Metallica retrospective.
But, yeah, they're damaged. They're literally Damage Incorporated.
Yes,
but
Damaged Incorporated.
My whole thing is that there's this. Bands have to think of sources of income outside of reproducing their records.
Right. Well, that's where the merch thing is so huge.
Yeah, and so Doyle basically made some comment to the effect of, I don't like the fact that. Sam, are you sitting on his phone?
It's okay.
My dog is sitting on Sean's phone. Sorry, guys.
Sam is the official dog of the show, and she can sit on the phone if she wants.
Okay. So Doyle was like, I don't like having to meet people backstage for the VIP stuff. I think it's like, I don't want to talk to these idiots.
Right. Says the idiot.
And to be perfectly blunt, I don't care if that's, your true feelings, but it's kind of like your job. It's saying like, it's like going to work and say, yeah, this would be a great place to work. It wasn't for you fucking customers out there.
Right.
And I'm not saying that you need that Doyle needs to like give you a back massage and tell you like come over to the house for barbecue. But I'm saying it's like
you're gonna love it.
There's a lot of people out there and they want something to take away. I don't do that level of VIP because again, I don't think there's much gain by meeting these people, unfortunately.
No.
I'm at this point in life where all it's going to do is going to ruin it for me.
That is a true fact, yeah.
And I'm like, so even like some of the small bands, like I said, this band Sloan that I've gone to every show they've done in town since like the last 15 years. And the shows are pretty small. They hang out before. I don't go up and talk to them because I don't need to have some weird interaction that like I'm off. I say something that's misinterpreted. And every time I put on a Sloan record, I think about the time I pissed off the bass player. It's like, no thanks. The music is sufficient enough. But that being said, for other people, they want to meet these guys.
Well, yeah.
And this kind of, horror type stuff, as much as it was very freaky when we were 15 and stuff like that, it's
campy.
It's campy now, and people bring their kids, and you can buy a Misfits shirt at Sears. And that, to me, that doesn't really diminish it because it never takes away what you had when it was underground or what. Because even I wasn't around when they were already broken up when I bought my first Misfits.
Same here, yeah.
So, but apparently a couple big names took him to task, like basically calling him a whiny bitch. It's like,
well, yeah. Well, because here's the thing. After the colossal failure of Christ the Conqueror, which was the metal band that they had formed after the Misfits collapsed, or after Glenn left and formed Samhain. They put out that album, and it was just like, what? They went back, Jerry and Doyle went back to working in their dad's machine shop. And, they were turning lathes until the lawsuit got sorted out and they could actually get back together and start recording again. And it blows me away that Doyle would be that tone deaf. It's like, you're working in blue collar production work in a metal shop, and you're given another shot to go back out and be a performer and have a band and be in a band and live that lifestyle, that rock and roll lifestyle that you've, been pining for your whole life. And you can't have, it goes without saying, we really shouldn't even have to say this, but you're never going to be a success. You're never going to get money or any of that stuff if you don't, take care of your customers. And for a musician, the fans, the people that buy the records or whatever, like if they want to pay an extra $100 to go backstage after a show, shake your hand and be like, oh my God, I love you, you're the best. Like, take the money, take the ego stroke, and be humble about it. Yeah, go home, tell your wife and kids, these people are fucking dumb, whatever. These are the people that are putting the roof over your head. These are the people that are putting food on your table. Suck it up.
Yeah, and I think that's basically what people were saying to him. And it's like, and of course, because it's 2019, he tried to turn it into like, I got anxiety.
It's a Me Too thing.
I got anxiety. Yeah, it's like,
wait a minute.
Someone grabbed my package, and they didn't get the grab my package,
right,
which is $400.
Taking money.
Yeah, it's like, I'll do it. But I bet at the end you probably find out it's just because he wants more money or something. Who knows? But
well, if one of the things that I noticed, and I'm sure you saw it as well, is that when you see all of the marketing material for these tours, it says the original Misfits featuring original singer and songwriter Glenn Danzig and original bassist Jerry Only. Doyle's not mentioned anywhere on any of the merchandise or any of the marketing materials. He's been playing playing, again, I'm using my air quotes, people, but he's been playing these shows with them, but he's not listed as a member.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if maybe he's got, because he does have merch at the booth, which was not being bought.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if maybe they're like, yeah, you can keep your merch. You can play the shows. You don't have to go out of pocket for your hotel or whatever, but we're not paying you for the show, or we're going to pay you like a maintenance fee.
Right.
I mean, who knows? I mean, I guess I don't really care at the end of the day what he's getting compensated. It's just that idea of like, I understand Glenn doesn't necessarily, there's no VIP packages for the original Misfits. You can't go back and meet the band. He's not interested in that. But it's kind of just, he doesn't get up there and go, give interviews where he's talking shit about the fans.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, yeah. And again, I will say just to look at the other, on the other side, yes, there is something kind of like unpunk about customer service. It's like that thing where it's like, yes, this is a band that like they literally dressed up like Halloween characters in the middle of the summer or whatever, whenever they play, and they have to think they're like not necessarily at a time when these things could literally get someone. You could either get denied your wounds over my hammy at Denny's, or you could literally get the shit kicked out of you at the gas station by some guy on a Friday night that doesn't like the cut of your jib.
True.
And there is a certain weirdness to have to be, would you hold my baby, Doyle Van Frankenstein? I really love that song 20 Eyes that you didn't actually play on or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Can you say 20 Eyes? It's like, okay, so I understand. Again, keep that shit to yourself.
Right.
Because people are not going to understand. I understand that he had a whole life and a career and ups and downs, and that informs how he feels about it. But 2 cents, and again, he might have just said this because people give interviews, and then one little thing you say cast off, it becomes,
the next whatever.
Mark Hamill says Star Wars fans can suck his dick, and it's like,
Right.
what?
Like, well, that's a hot take.
And it's like, and then later he's like, I don't know, people are mostly nice. No one's told me to suck their dick or anything, and then it gets turned
Right,
around.
it's turned around,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's like,
True.
It's like, but yes,
Gotcha moment.
but even that being said, if that is true, it's the kind of thing. It's like, it's kind of like, what do you call it? Second harvest of your rock and roll dreams.
Yeah.
It's a real privilege to be able to play those stages, and I definitely did. It's not like Doyle was like, he didn't say anything on stage, and neither did Jerry, but just knowing that he kind of has that kind of, he was like, I'm doing this for Doyle Wolfgang von Frankenstein to promote my brand or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, the merch, that's where all the bands make the money anyway, with the merch. And
T-shirts.
that's why I kind of felt bad that Damned I didn't like their shirt. Otherwise I would have bought one.
Right.
But I just can't wear a shirt let's say I only make an exception once a year for buying merch that I don't really want, because I just want to have something to remember. Because long story short, the T-shirt selection was a little weird. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, maybe you can do you remember like all the variety?
Well, yeah. So the shirts and sweatshirts and whatnot, hats and all that crap. We were commenting when we were standing in line that it's pretty much everything that's ever been released before.
You're right.
But they just put the original on the logo. And then there was some like sparkly, shiny chick shirts and like bedazzled stuff and, whatever. And that's fine. And, I found a better selection of Misfits t-shirts at my local Walmart. And they're like 1/100th of the price too. But the shirt, the one shirt that I bought, the one, it actually has the venue and the date and all that stuff on it. And that's one of the things that I do when I go to a show, is I try and get something that has, the show and the venue, or the town or whatever on the back of it, because, I wanted, I was like, I was there, here it is on, like that kind of thing. The rest of the stuff you can find online. I'm not going to pay $50 for a T-shirt that's exactly like the other T-shirt that's exactly like the other T-shirt just because they added original. Like, I couldn't justify that, and most of it was, it was just it felt like retread. The merch,
I mean that's the thing. It's like my favorite Misfits shirt is this. Aside from the original, just white on black, is that. Again, I bought it at Sears of all places. It's a one that it's almost like a photo image of the Crimson Ghost, so you can see the detail around the meshing in the eyes and stuff like that. But yeah, this one was very specific. It literally says White River Amphitheater, da 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 da. And I bought it because it was like, again, I have an Earth AD shirt. I have another one. I forget which one it's called. I mean, I have a bunch of these anyway, so it's kind of like I need it specifically. Yeah. But it's like, when am I going to wear this one? Because
I've been wearing the hell out of it. I can't wear it to work, but I've been wearing the hell out of it.
Well, it's kind of like my Cannibal Corpse shirt that I bought, that I'm like, oh, I got my Cannibal Corpse shirt. And then I'm like, when am I going to wear it? There's nothing offensive on the Misfits shirt. Cannibal Corpse, there's literally somebody getting their face ripped off. And I actually got the shirt that was like the least offensive of the.
I know. I have a shirt that I got at one of the Misfits shows in the late '90s, and it's got this gothy demon girl on the front, and it's got boobs. And oh yeah, I get so much shit when I wear that. Yeah, but it's like it's got this. It's got like on her chest there's a cross or an X or whatever, and you can see eyes and like fingers coming out of it. And then on the back of the shirt it says "Can't hold back the demons." And it's like I love that shirt, but it's not one you can wear to church. So,
well, you can wear it once.
Well, do whatever you want on your last day.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that I go to church or wear Misfit shirts there, but the point is. Yeah, it's not one you take to like family picnics or other places. So.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. People still remember my Jesus Lizard shirt from college. Did not go over well with my aunt. But well, I mean, so just to maybe start wrapping this up, I did want to kind of touch because I missed it and I kind of wanted to go, but I had this show and then the other show. I didn't. You went and saw Iron Maiden.
I did, yes.
And now this was Tacoma Dome.
T-Dome, yes.
That's a big show. How did that sound?
It sounded great. It's the second time I've seen them there, and also I saw them at the White River Amphitheater as well. The show, first of all, we were talking about the theatrical element earlier. The Iron Maiden, like when they played Aces High, they had a life-size Spitfire fighter plane come out over the crowd and all this stuff. I love that shit. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love the shows that they do, and they have when we saw them the first time, it was the Fear of the Dark tour, I believe, and they had big inflatable Eddie like walking behind the stage, 30-foot tall, like it was, and Bruce Dickinson is like 90, and he's got so much energy, and he runs around on stage, and he fucking hits it, man. He's
scream for me, Tacoma.
Yes, we heard that. I believe Mark and I were counting. My friend Mark Evans and I went to the show, and he was counting. He's like, "What's the over/under on the Scream for Me, Tacoma?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, man. Like maybe like 6." And he's like, "Oh, it's gonna be like 12." And he was over. Yeah, it was way over that. It was like, like every song, "Scream for Me, Tacoma." Like, oh god, here we go. So anyway, no, but those guys, when if you are an Iron Maiden fan and you've never seen them live, what's wrong with you? If you're not an Iron Maiden fan and you haven't seen them live, what's wrong with you?
I know.
It's an experience, and I will tell you that they sound just as good in a wooden arena in Tacoma as they do in a studio.
Wow.
The whoever is doing the engineering on the shows for sound is a pro's pro. Those guys, the musicians, are pros. And Bruce Dickinson takes care of his shit, takes care of his voice. I've never seen him have an off performance. You watch the videos, you get the DVDs or whatever, their concert series, and I know, they pick and choose the best of the best for that stuff. But those guys live are amazing. And again, we talk about the stadium rock thing. It's like you love your bands, you love listening to them loud. There is nothing better than listening to a band that you love so loud that like your heart is blowing out the back of your chest cavity. It's like fantastic. So yeah, that show was really good. We were down on the floor, and they've done some things. Like the last time we saw them, they had closed off kind of almost a third of the dome, and they kind of set it up that way. This one, it was fully open. Both sides of the arena were, reserve seating were full. In the back, they had, all the merch stuff set up in the beer place and like all that. And the floor was packed, and it was so good. It was a great show.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think I've talked this before. It's like I kind of came to Iron Maiden late, only because it was. When I grew up, it was just everybody was into Maiden, and I kind of wanted my own thing, and it just never connected. So my only actual Iron Maiden experience is one time I ran into Dave Murray coming out of an ABC store in Maui.
Nice.
And I was just like,
"Hey, wait a minute!
It's the guy, it's Dave Murray from it's no." And And I literally had to Google to make sure because he had a tattoo on his forearm.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's Dave Murray. It's like, I should have known. I've seen him. I've seen the posters and stuff where he has that ridiculous tattoo. He's the one that sounds like this. I've been playing guitar for 40 years. I will say, just my last thing on Iron Maiden, if people ever get a chance to get, actually, I think it's on their YouTube channel, that they have the History of the Beast or whatever, which is like a 3-parter video thing. It did come out on DVD with like early television, like the Paul Di'Anno years. Anyway, it's literally the history of Iron Maiden from Pub to Paul Di'Anno leaving the group.
Right.
And then there's they do a part when Bruce joins, and they do one when Bruce leaves, and Blaze, and then whatever. But it's so fascinating that how long that they labored before. It wasn't like a thing where they're like, oh, let's have a band, and then it's like 6 months later they're like, those guys were like older and had much more, had to change, refine their sound, lost members, people got kicked out that actually have been in the band for 40 years, but they'd been kicked out for 6 months. And it's really, they're really a fascinating, like a working class heavy metal band.
Yeah.
And, what's his face? Steve Harris is, he's the engine behind that thing,
right,
more so than any of those. I mean, I think he technically, I don't know how it works, but I think he owns Iron Maiden technically. Everybody else is just kind of partners or whatever. I don't know. It's fascinating. Do you have any shows you're planning on going to, or?
No upcoming shows yet, though. They did just announce tickets for Adamant next year, and I think I'm probably going to try and do that one.
Where's he playing?
I want to say it's at the Showbox Soto. Okay, is it, or is it somewhere else? You know what? I'm not going to speak on that. I don't know. The last time I saw him at Showbox Market. And he was on the Blue Black Hussar tour, which was one of those things. It was interesting. My brother and I went to see that show, and we had no idea what to expect because obviously Adamant has been through some things and kind of went off the deep end there for a while. But he got his shit back together, and he did that tour, and it was fantastic. He was playing his new stuff and played, of course, all the great old hits. And again, another maybe it's because I had no expectations going into it, but when I left that show, I was like, this dude still can rock. And again, another great performance, good sound, good voice, good energy, like all that. So and my cousin Jason, he just came over from Ireland a couple weeks ago and saw Adamant in Chicago. So he flew over for the Chicago show, and he said same thing, like he's still banging it out. So I'm confident, and I'm looking forward to that. I just need to get tickets, but that's the next big one I have on my radar. How about you?
Well, just a quick aside. Have you ever seen the movie Nomads?
No.
Have you ever seen anything he's ever done as acting, Adamant stuff?
I don't think so.
He's in it. It's during the classic, post his big pop thing, but it's kind of a weird atmospheric 80s for the listeners out there. I don't know. It's not typically a horror movie, but it is a supernatural thriller. And he plays like kind of it's very, Pierce Brosnan of all people is in it. It's directed by John McTiernan, I think, who did the Predator, the original Predator movie,
okay. All right.
and the original Die Hard. And it's kind of a sleeper. It is currently on video. You can get it on DVD or Blu-ray, but it's kind of it's like a weird like LA kind of. It's really hard to just look it up. It's called, what did I just call it? Nomads. Sorry. Yeah. Blank. Anyway. I actually have a couple shows I have to look it up. I think the week, I'm going to see the Sloan, which I'm kind of pissed about because this is for people who are not from Seattle and are not listening to Seattle. This isn't going to be very interesting, but my least favorite venue in all of Seattle is Numos. And that's where I saw Red Cross, and I had to make an exception, and I had a good time. But the problem with it is, I don't know what it is. It's in Capitol Hill, which is kind of our arts. It's the crux of the arts and entertainment for, young people out there doing stuff. So it can get a bit rowdy on the weekends, and even like a bit and I don't care about rowdy, but as long as you're not bumping into me, and that's what happens. I go to Numos.
You probably shouldn't be going to shows.
I get bumped into way too much, and it's like I got very annoyed with this. It's always like it's not even a thing where it's just somebody walking by. I'm not a prick, if somebody's bumping in, whatever. We're talking blackout drunk people using me for balance kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I had one of those incidents happen again, and I was just like, all right, I'm going up for the Melvins. I'm going to go watch them from the balcony. And it's because the Red Cross, it was like, great, whatever. And Red Cross, if people don't know, they've been a band that they literally started when the singer, the brothers, the McDonald brothers, singer was 14. Steven, the bass player, was 11. They played with Black Flag. They played with Black Flag. Their original guitar player is the guitar player of the Circle Jerks. I mean, they've been around. They're you've never probably heard of them, but they're rock royalty. I mean, they're one of them's brother-in-law is his father-in-law is Lenny Warnaker. He's married to the Anna Warnaker from That Dog from the 90s. Their brothers Joey Warnaker. The older brother's married to Charlotte Caffrey of the Go-Go's. I mean, it's just they're literally
the first family of rock.
Yeah, the first family of rock. They just successfully kickstarted a documentary about them that's going to do their by the time it's done, it'll be their 40th anniversary as being a band, probably. Maybe not. No, that's what's starting to get there. But so it was great to see them. But it was like, I'm tired of being tenderized. And I know the Melvins tend to have more of like kids. The joking thing about the Melvins is that they always go, yeah, our audience never changes. It's always like 17-year-olds or whatever.
That's weird.
And it's like that thing where like the dads, they rotate out or whatever. It always seems to be kids. And I was like, the booze is flowing. People are starting to compact. I'm like, I'm going upstairs. And of course, I'm up there with all the old farts. And the old farts, Dan Peters of Mudhoney, Matt Cameron of Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Kim Thale were hanging out. It was like Fleet Week for grunge. And I'm sitting up, and I'm like sitting up there, and I'm just kind of sitting up there, and I, not that I'm like over it, but I'm also not, again, that whole rules apply. You don't start interacting with the people whose music you enjoy because it's only going to end in tears. Right. So I didn't even really talk to him, but it's like all these nerdy kids like,
right.
And the funny thing is these guys, I kind of forget that's like, they haven't been like super famous for a while now. So they actually kind of liked it, I think. It was like, at first I was like, well, I'm not going to acknowledge these rock stars because they don't want to be bothered. But no, they were stopping for selfies and high-fiving people and not even side-eyeing them when they left. It was like I think they all kind of enjoyed it.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
So it was kind of funny. So the creme de la creme of my old fartness is that my wife and I, the way Numos is set up, there's an upper deck, but it's obscured view of the stage. So they put up a couple of TVs, so they have cameras on things. So I listed the Melvins, but I watched them on the TV for that whole set. It was actually pretty fun. It was like we had a chair and everything. Now I'm not lame all the time. I will say in my defense, about 6 months ago, we went and saw Cannibal Corpse on the Decibel tour. It was great. It was all these great death metal bands, but we tried to leave. Like we were like, well, we'll leave before the encore because it was getting late, and it was at the Showbox Soda, which is a historic venue or whatever. But it kind of has this weird kind of like, it's like a cattle trough. You know how it just like forms people into this kind of weird way of being on stage. Well, we were offset stage the whole night, enjoying ourselves, but I said, all right, we'll leave before the encore. That way we can beat traffic. And Cannibal Corpse, I mean, the funny thing is those guys are,
That's such an old guy thing.
Talk about great, I know. It's all about like, and I have to go, did I pee? Did I get enough water? Is my hearing protection installed from, actually.
Safety first.
Not really, because, our mutual friend Sam, he was there, but he was like, covered in sweat and thrown around. So he's like our age, and he wasn't worried about
he's a little crazy. Yeah.
He wasn't worried about his salt content of his sweat. He was in it for it. So not all of us are old farts like me. So we timed it just right. And so they'd finish their song, and George Corpse Grinder Fisher, look him up. He's a great guy. He's just, hey, how you guys having a fucking time? And like, all right, we can go. It's like, and as we're starting to, excuse me, pardon me. And he's like, I know you fuckers are waiting all night for this song. Hammer, smashed, face, brrr, and it just like, whoa! It's like what do you call it when a tornado just appears, a dust devil in the middle of this thing, just as we're walking out of the venue, and it catches my wife and I at the same time. Within 2 seconds, my wife and I are both in the pit getting swirled around. And if you go on YouTube and you put on like Showbox Soto 2019 Hammer Smash Face, you can actually see me zoom by some guy's phone. My poor wife got knocked over first thing, and I couldn't even find her. And thank goodness, because I actually feel that metalheads, as much as they talk about guts and gore and Satan and stuff, they're generally good people. They picked her right up, and she didn't get stepped on or anything like that. But it was scary for her because it's not something she was into. She was enough of a sport when I said,
to be there.
When I said, "Hey, honey, Morbid Angel and Cannibal Corpse and this," a bunch of other bands, and she's like, "Yeah, sure." So it's like, God bless her. But it took me 5 minutes to find her after the show. It was so like terrifying, but it was like, okay,
still got caught in traffic.
Yeah. So we got that, and we got caught in traffic, and then, but yeah, so we did that. So we're not complete lamos, but at the end of next month, we're gonna see King Diamond.
Oh, very nice.
At the Paramount, which is kind of like, I just picked up his new live thing, and he had some issues with his voice, and I think he had a heart attack and stuff, so his voice is a little fucked up, but it's back,
Nice.
So I'm excited about that. So.
King Diamond, wow, there's something I haven't listened to in a while.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's kind of like, I've kind of gone through, again, I was like, I wasn't super into him. I kind of would put it on and be like, oh yeah, he's kind of fun, but it's like, I'm more of like, the music's got to move me, but now I'm kind of like, you can have your weird sissy European metal and stuff, and he can do his high. It's fun. It's like I said, I'm not like a diehard. But then I found out Merciful Fate's going to be touring in 2020, so I'm like, oh, geez, I wonder if I should have. I don't think he does any Merciful Fate stuff live, because I've already tried to find if there's a Portland band that does a Merciful Fate tribute band, and the guy comes out in the makeup, and I keep like, come to Seattle. I'm not going down to Portland to watch.
If I happen to be in Portland when you're playing, I'll see you.
Yes.
But
yeah, that, and I think in December we're going to go see I don't know if you ever listen to the Posies.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're John and Ken Stringfellow are doing they're doing an acoustic thing at this is talking about lame venues. Kirkland Performance Center. It's like, oh yeah, they probably do a rousing version of Thornton Wilder's Our Town starring Mike Farrell from MASH. But that night, I mean, it's not going to be. It's acoustic, so it's not. I wasn't expecting jumping from the raft.
Right.
But those guys, I follow both of them on Instagram, and it's like shockingly how many shows those guys do in a year, solo and together. It's insane. He'd be like 6 a.m. he's at the airport, then he's in Boston, and then he's back home, and it's like he does fly. And both Ken and I think he's in Europe all the time. For guys who are probably 50 now, it's like that's the reality of a musician now. It's like it's not like work on your Porsche and collect your royalty checks. It's it's like you're playing
only Mix-a-Lot does that.
Yeah, you're playing like a tea house in Moldavia or something.
Yes.
It's
like Anvil.
Exactly. Hey, man, what's that guy Lips from Anvil or whatever?
That was a great documentary,
yes.
By the way, if anybody ever had a chance to see that.
Well, I think if we talk any longer, this wouldn't be considered a Minnesota, and we're doing another one right after we take a break. But you won't know that. It'll be like 2 separate episodes. But if you want to, tell us, did you see the Misfits on this tour? Hosts at talkingbirdcast.com. You can just drop us a line. Let us know what shows. What's a band that you hear the kind of bands that we're talking about? What's somebody that tours that we might know about that you got to check these people out. You got to check this person out because they're doing great shows. Because it's that's the thing. I'm getting a lot of pleasure at going. Yes, I whine a lot about getting home at a sensible time. I do. It's it's not even a thing oh, you're not being fair. It's no, I fucking whine about it.
It's true.
Because I like my bowl and I like my bed. And it's I just, it's whatever. But if you got a suggestion, I'm always up for for something you're like, no, you got to check these guys out live. I mean, I found out the Mott the Hoople was supposed to be in, Ian Hunter. And I mean, this guy's literally in his late 70s. He's 78. It's the guy that all the young dudes, and he's been around since the 60s. And he was going to be here. He had to cancel. He's got some hearing issue right now, but it's like, I was like, oh man, when this is rescheduled, I think I'm going to this. Because it's like, I want to see it, especially like, I'm sorry if the Osmonds came to town. If they were doing a rock set, I'd probably sign up for it.
I just have to have you tell me about that.
Yeah. Anyway,
check out Ginger though if you haven't.
Huh?
Ginger. Yeah, Jin.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a metal band.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. What's the thrash metal band? Anyway, I just recently got turned on to them by a coworker of mine, and I'm down that rabbit hole. So,
nice.
Yeah, throw it on your
Ginger.
list.
Yes, and check out the that Damn documentary if you want a thing. And I actually think the Misfits just played in Madison Square Garden, and I think the tour is over.
For real?
Who knows?
Because it goes on these hiatuses, so
yeah,
they can go do other
so
things.
if you and if and also if anybody here listening is going to any of those Mr. Bungle shows and wants to tell us how it went, drop us a line. I'm excited. I wish I could go to that. You heard about those.
Yeah.
But they're not doing any of the classics on. They're just doing their demo, which is kind of, I'd still do that. I'd still go if I could afford that. I'd fly to LA and see it, but I'm not going to afford that. Anyway, I'm just going to wrap it up there.
Hosts
at Talking Birdcast. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah.